All right, if you are just joining us, it's a little bit before 10 o'clock Pacific, so we are early, just getting warmed up here and making sure all of the equipment is working properly and the webinar itself is working properly. So we'll be started in just a moment. All right, looks like we're having some folks join us. And again, we're going to get officially started in just a moment. We're checking out some of the equipment right now, making sure everything works. In fact, we've got a little bit of a warm-up right now. The first thing is just doing a sound check. And I want to make sure that you can hear me. And the way to do that, you may see a chat bar in the right-hand side of your screen. If you will, just send me a quick message like an okay or I hear you, and that will let me know that that part of the webinar is working. So we'll wait a moment to check that. Oh, thank you, Linda. So at least one person can hear me. I'm just going to see if a couple other. All right. Yep. Okay, good. So audio is working. Always want to do the sound check. This is going to be an interactive webinar today. So the other thing we're going to do, we're going to use chat. We'll come back to that in a moment. But we'll also use polling as a way a couple of times to just get your perspective, get people to weigh in on a couple of issues. So got a sample poll question for you. Question is, this is Ask Me Anything. So it's about the Service Culture Handbook. And let me launch a poll here. Question is, have you read the Service Culture Handbook? So you should see that come up on your screen. And it's an opportunity for you to let me know. And so the good news is poll results are coming in as we speak. The bad news is I have to toggle the display to allow you to see the results as they're coming in. So I can do that for the next poll. I didn't do that for this one, but the polling seems to work. And this is cool. It looks like about a third of you, 57%, have read the book. A few of you are reading it now, and a few of you have not read it just yet. So if you have not read the book, but would like to get it, I want to share something with you real quickly. Oops, let me stop that poll. Thank you for doing that. That part's working. I'm going to share something with you real quickly. And again, if you're just joining us, we're early. We haven't officially started yet. We're just warming up. Let me share this with you very briefly. You can get the book on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. If you happen to get it on Kindle, or if you have it already, sometimes people say, well, how do I get it signed? Best way is if we're at the same place at the same time. But the second best way is if you email me your mailing address, what I will do is I will sign a sticker or a book plate and send it your way. So you can stick it right inside the book, and it's the next best thing to having an actual signed copy of the Service Culture Handbook. So you can get it on Amazon if you don't have it already. So we'll make this part go away here. And chat. So let me come to chat for just a moment. We wanted to test that out as part of our test. Again, if you're just joining us, everything's fine. We're just practicing a little bit before we get started. Okay, so we're going to use this chat bar to allow us to allow you to ask questions and allow you to interact with me and with each other. And so I think it'd be fun just to get us started. If you would, what would an employee who is obsessed with customer service look like? Hopefully you have one of those employees on your team. But let's see. So the question again for you is to describe an employee who is obsessed with service. And if you will do that by typing a short little chat message. Let me give you just a moment to do that. This is why we do the sound check. For those of you just joining us, we haven't officially gotten started yet. We're doing a little sound check, checking of the equipment. And again, the question is, if you can, describe an employee in just a sentence or two who is obsessed with service. You can use the chat box to do that. You should see that on the right-hand side of your screen. And just at the very bottom, there you go. Thanks, Arthur. All right. Someone who sees through the customer's eyes. Perfect. Perfect. Going above and beyond. And I like what you're saying, Melissa, about intrinsic motivation, that they really have that love for helping others. You can see that. These are great examples. And he's super friendly, eager to listen, a bubbly personality. Excellent. So these are great. And that the chat function is working. Perfect. So I think we're good to go then. Let's get things started. We did our sound check. That's working, at least for most of us. We did our poll question and we did our chat question. So welcome to our Ask Me Anything webinar. And the reason I wanted to do this, let me stop this for just a moment. The reason I wanted to do this webinar is I've talked to a lot of people who are reading the Service Culture Handbook or who have already read it, and they're implementing the concepts from the book. Things are mostly going well, but we had roadblocks along the way. And so I want to really connect with the audience, readers, people like you who are trying to build a service culture in your organization and find out what are some of the common challenges people are having and what maybe are some of the missing pieces, and take a moment to see if we can address some of those. So that's the goal for the webinar today. We're going to be answering some of your questions, and I've got some questions from some folks already. The way to send me questions, if you'd like, is through that chat box, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Some questions we may not be able to get to, and what I'll do is I'll write a follow-up blog post and answer those there. So ask away. Even if we don't have a chance to get to your question during the webinar, we'll still find a way to answer your question on my blog. And that post will probably come out tomorrow, Thursday. So again, the agenda, I'm going to start tackling the questions that some of you sent me ahead of time, or questions that generally I get most often. And then we'll answer additional questions that you share with me via chat today. And again, the responses will be published on my blog. If you don't know how to get to my blog, I'll show it at the end of the webinar, but it's toystersolutions.com/blog. Fairly easy to find. Again, I'll share with you how to find it at the end of the webinar today. Okay, so I want to start with some of the most frequent questions. Some of the people who signed up for this webinar sent me these questions ahead of time, and there's questions, frankly, that I get a lot. And the first one is, how do I get employees to buy in to the customer service vision? And so we have to pause for just a moment. For those of you who are not sure what a customer service vision is, this is what I found is the linchpin to a customer-focused culture. And what it is, it's a shared definition of outstanding customer service. So the idea is that we get everybody on the same page. And when we think about a lot of the companies that I profiled in the Service Culture Handbook, as well as other leading customer-focused companies, they almost always have one of these visions, and it's something very simple. For example, JetBlue, it's consistently been rated as the best airline in the United States for customer service, even higher than Southwest Airlines, and their vision is simply inspire humanity. And what that means is we want to take a industry that is sometimes kind of inhuman. We can probably think of plenty of examples of that, and just add that human touch back in so people really enjoy their travel experience. And so that's where the customer service vision comes into play. Before I answer that question, though, I want to ask another poll question, and that is, how many of you have a customer service vision? And this could be for your organization or possibly your team. So I'm just curious. Let's leave this up here for just a second. By the way, if the answer is I don't know, that's okay. It just means that your vision isn't effective, right? Because the vision should be that shared definition that guides everybody's service. And if we don't know what it is, it certainly can't guide what we're doing, right? Okay, hopefully you can see the poll results as they're coming in. This is really impressive. 75% of you right now are saying, yeah, we have a vision. It's a little dynamic, 70%, and 30% are saying no. One of the nice things about the book, if you haven't gotten to that part already, is Chapter 3, step-by-step instructions for writing a customer service vision. And I will tell you, we'll come back to this question, how do we get employees to buy in? One of the things that I've seen is the biggest challenge is customer service leaders create a vision in a vacuum. In other words, they don't really follow the steps outlined in the book that are best practices used by companies who are really successful at this. They create this vision on their own, or maybe they hire a consultant, even someone like me, to create the vision at a customer service leadership retreat, but it doesn't really connect to reality. So how do we get employees to buy in? I'm going to end that poll now. Thank you for participating in that. So there's a couple of things that we can do to get employee buy-in. The first thing I think is the concept of co-creation. The best customer service visions are created with input from all employees. And when I work with clients to create that customer service vision, I get everybody involved. Even if it's just a chance to weigh in via like an online survey or a town hall or a forum of some kind to say, this is what I think the vision should be. When I write the vision, I only invite about 7 to 10 people to that writing process. And that's just a practical matter. More than that is just too many people in the room to wordsmith something. But what we do is we make sure that that 7 to 10 people is a representative sample of employees. We've got senior leadership, middle management, and also frontline employees involved. And the third piece then to get buy-in to the vision with that co-creation is we share it with people and we invite people to enlist in understanding the vision. And so that's one of the most frequent questions I get. How do we get employees to buy in? It really comes down to the process that you use to create the vision. And where I found that customer service leaders have struggled is they haven't precisely followed those steps in Chapter 3. So I just gave you a high-level overview, but go back to Chapter 3 if you're having a struggle with this. Now, this next question I get, and this one's disheartening. What do I do if executives don't truly support a service culture? And I find this one is disheartening. And if you want to use the chat to share your own experiences here, the problem with this question is that I don't know a good answer. I really don't. I'm still searching for it. And what I mean is I haven't found a situation where we've been able to get an executive who doesn't care about culture and somehow magically turn him or her around and now they're on board. Typically, culture only rises to the highest level that it's supported. So if you're a team leader and you support it, but your boss who's a division leader does not, you can get your team on board and really work hard to get your team obsessed with service through a team customer service vision. But your boss, say the division leader, if she's not on board, it's probably not going to spread throughout the division. And that's unfortunately just a reality. Now, there's some things you can do, I think, to help, but again, I haven't found that great solution. And one of the things I think you can do to help is enlist executive leadership in real experiences. One of the challenges that executives face is they're too insulated from actual customers. So when I was researching the Service Culture Handbook, I found that executives in customer-focused companies, they spend a lot of time really listening to customers, whether it was face-to-face or over the phone or email contact. They would listen and read verbatim comments from customers on surveys. They would do follow-ups. So if we got a negative survey, maybe an executive would spend time each week calling those customers to say, hey, you gave us a negative survey. I really want to find out why and what we can do better. And that customer contact helped those executives really have a better appreciation, more empathy for customers. So I wish that there was a better answer to this one, but I think what you can do is create the best environment you possibly can and do what you can to chip away your executives, but it may not work. And yeah, I like that. Nate, thank you for sharing that. So if you're following in the comments, again, here's where you can weigh in. The idea of kind of creating your own, I like that, your culture utopia within your own area. I think that's the good thing. And Andy, thanks for dropping the hint. I think that's good, right? Started the conversation. That's fantastic. And that might be it too. I'm not saying this problem can't be resolved. I'm just saying I haven't figured out how to resolve it. And Andy, let me know how that goes. If dropping this book on an executive's desk will solve it, then I'm all on board with that. But even starting the conversation is probably a good place. Okay, so another question I get a lot is, how do I sustain excitement for our service culture? I think this is a real tough one, because employees will start tuning things out over a while, over a period of time. If it becomes repetitive or becomes boring. Now, here's what I found with this one. If you want someone to understand something and really embrace something and remember something, there's two things that you've got to be able to do here. One of which is repetition. We got to talk about our service culture all the time. And if we don't, then we certainly can't sustain excitement. So one mistake that I see organizations make is they do this big rollout for the service culture and then nothing. They stop talking about it. They move on to other things. It's a huge mistake. But the second thing is, if you just repeat the same message over and over and over and over again, people get bored, they tune out. So the second thing is novelty. We've got to come at our service culture in many different ways. We can't just repeat the same message in the same way over and over and over again. Now, the book outlines a number of different ways that you can do that, but I want to stop here and ask you via chat, what are some different ways that you can repeat the same message? If you have a customer service vision and that's the core message, what are some different ways that have worked for you to repeat that message, but maybe in a different manner? And so an example might be, we have an executive share it in a town hall meeting, but then we have a manager share it in a one-on-one meeting. Or maybe we have a team meeting where people share examples of how they lived the customer service vision over the past week. So those are just a few examples, but I'm wondering if you would share via chat, what are some different things maybe you have tried or could try that are just different ways to connect people in your organization to your customer service vision? Let me be quiet for just a moment and let you have a minute to chat, and we'll talk about what you share. So I like this one. Yeah, all right, Nate, thank you. So trying to embed customer service vision into the QA process. For those of you not familiar with the QA process, I think what Nate's referring to is in a help desk or contact center environment, we're evaluating those service calls. This call may be recorded for quality and training purposes. It really is. The phone calls, emails, et cetera, and evaluating those compared to a set of service standards. That's a great way to do it. It's a process you're already doing, and you're connecting one-on-one feedback with your customer service vision. So that's fantastic. Florian, providing different examples. And I love this, making the theory more concrete. One of the big questions that I think every employee's got to be able to answer about the customer service vision is, how do I contribute? And I think that's a key thing, is it becomes more abstract if I can point to the vision and it's a poster on the wall and here's what I learned it means in training, but I don't know how it's part of my job. So having people share concrete examples is fantastic. Amy, I like this. I think training has its place, and one of the things that training can do is, from time to time, just coming back and saying, let's formally get everybody together and just reset, get everybody back on the same page. A question that's kind of ancillary to that is, how often should we revisit the customer service vision? I think at least once a year, and you could do training around that to get everybody to get started, rethinking how they contribute, etc. Arthur, all right, keeping it fresh by having them keep a log of customer interactions. And I like that one, reviewing the difficult ones and then talking about those principles from different angles. So fantastic examples. All right. A couple of folks are saying that they're logging in and they can't get access to the video. So good news is we're recording this. I'm wondering, is anyone else experiencing this issue? Just give me a heads up if not, although I'm not sure exactly what we can do about it in the moment. So I'm going to pull up our deck back here to some frequently asked questions again. Okay, Craig, thank you for a little on-the-spot tech support. So it might be an extension issue. So if you have a different browser, that's working well. But often that's if it's not working, the tech support folks that are working in like try a different browser. Have you cleared your cache? Right? Those are the couple that might get it to start. So thank you all for that bit of tech support. Okay, I want to remind you all that the chat area is also where you can share your questions. And so if you have questions, we want to make sure that we get to them today. So make sure that you use the chat function to share questions or roadblocks that you've come in across via the chat box. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Those that we can't get to, I'm going to come circle back to them, write a blog post to sum it all up. And because I want to really continue the dialogue. So I want to ask you another question. I've got some more questions that I got prior to the webinar. I want to pause just a moment. I want to get a little input from you because part of what I'm trying to do here, frankly, is build community and share resources and really be as helpful as I possibly can to customer service leaders. And so this is kind of some pre-marketing, if you will. My question for you is, if I were to hold like a service culture workshop, and this is probably something that's like a one-day intensive, like how do we implement the concepts from the book? I haven't even thought about where it will be or what the pricing will be yet. I've done this with a couple of clients though, and the idea is much more hands-on, kind of taking your questions and really digging into, how do we create that customer service vision? How do we engage our employees? How do we align our environment and our operations around that concept of a service culture and our customer service vision? So this is really, really early stages, but I just want to get a feel for what you're thinking. It sounds like a lot of you said, hey, I'll go. And some of you are saying, well, it's local, which usually means, hey, if it's convenient and not too expensive, because we know that travel is always tough to get into that. One of the things that I've been trying to do with the Service Culture Handbook and other things that I'm doing is make access to these concepts as cheap and as inexpensive as possible, because I know a lot of us don't have budget for culture. Should there be a budget for culture? Absolutely. But the reality is there often isn't. Other things take precedence. So I'm trying to make things as inexpensive as possible. One of the reasons that I came out with the book was to do just that. I've had some great conversations with service leaders who've been reading the book, and I've used it to talk them out of hiring me as a consultant. So believe it or not, that's good for me. I'm trying to empower you. So thanks for the feedback. So a lot of you would go, it probably depends on how convenient it is, price point, etc. So I appreciate that feedback. Stay tuned. Like I said, I don't know for sure that that's something we'll do, but and Julie, the online course, funny enough, so if anyone has access to Linda or LinkedIn Learning, and if you're a LinkedIn Premium subscriber, you have access to this. I have a 12-minute overview course right now, but I'm reshooting it and I'm aligning it more directly with the book, and it's going to come out this fall. It's going to be a very short course, but it's going to be a video-based training course that connects with the book. So Julie, thank you for that. Also stay tuned. If you're not subscribed to my blog, that's probably the best place to get updates on things like this, online courses, other resources. My blog again is toystersolutions.com/blog. I'll share the address in a moment. Okay, so if you will, send me what questions you might have. And I want to get to some additional questions. So these are questions that people sent to me prior to the webinar. And one of them, and Estelle, yes, we're answering questions. So that's the whole conversation here is if you have a question about implementing a customer-focused service culture, that's what we're here to do today. And I'm very sorry you can't see the video. We will send out a replay link, so you might be able to see it there, but audio only if you can hear me. In fact, let me just do this right here, folks. Quick message, just to see if Estelle can hear me. I'm not sure if you can or not. If you can hear me, we can go audio only. So there was always a workaround. Okay, so another question that I had was, should we have a separate vision for each team or department? And the short answer to that is no. The most mature customer-focused organizations, there's one customer vision to rule them all. In fact, in a lot of organizations, that customer service vision is really the mission statement or the corporate vision or the brand promise. So one is better than many because we want to align not just a customer service team, we want to align everybody if possible. Now, the only time with where I would say have a separate vision for a team or department is when your organization does not have one. And in that case, I think your next best option is to create a vision for your team or department. But generally speaking, I would say have just one vision. That's really the sign of a mature organization. Okay, another question that I have is, does a service culture apply to internal customer service? And to give you a little more background on this, one of the people who sent this question and said that in their organization there was this thought that, hey, we want to treat our customers with a lot of respect and dignity and really value them, but hey, employees are just employees and they're going to do what they're told. So the answer to that is yes, a service culture 100% applies to internal service. And I think we've heard this mantra, happy employees equals happy customers. And in my experience, it is very, very, very true. The people who are serving our customers, if they don't feel well served, then it's hard to ask them to model behaviors that they're not seeing on a regular basis. So the short and simple answer to this is we need to treat everybody the way we want to treat our customers. And I want you also to understand that culture really is a code of behavior and thinking. And it's really a disconnect to expect people outside the organization to behave one way, but inside the organization behave another way. Human nature just doesn't work that way. We're probably going to treat our customers the way we treat each other because that's truly how culture works. It's a collective way of thinking, acting, and understanding the world around us. And having a disconnect from one to the other usually means we're going to follow the way we treat our employees. Okay, another question, and again, I want to remind you, submit your questions via the chat function. We'll get to those as well. One of the questions I got was a lot more specific, but what are best practices for a customer service survey? And so this is we're getting voice of feedback from a customer. I talk about this a little bit in the book, chapter 6, where we get into how do we align metrics with our service version, our service vision. But for a survey, I'll give you 3 best practices at a very high level. Number 1, have a purpose. Know why you're surveying customers. And believe it or not, one of the biggest reasons why surveys fall flat on their face is we don't really know why we're doing it. And so it defaults to, well, get a better score. The problem with get a better score is that's not really anything that our customers care about. In fact, I've uncovered really kind of nefarious ways to increase your score without necessarily improving customer service. I'm happy to share those with you, but that's not really the point, right? The point is we want to be able to improve service. So number 1 is have a purpose. Why are you doing this? Is it to decrease defects? Is it to improve customer loyalty? Is it to decrease repeat contacts? Have a specific purpose. The second step then is to target your survey to that purpose. And often what happens in organizations is they add like many, many questions, 30 questions that are all really nonsense questions. There was a study a couple of years ago that was done that found that those surveys that you get at the bottom of your receipt, about 60% of those are absolute garbage, that they're so poorly constructed they don't yield any good data. So you start with your purpose, but then create questions designed to get to your purpose. I challenge my clients to have just 3 questions. You can do more than 3 questions, but I think you need to justify any additional question. 3 questions are, 1, a rating of some kind. So it could be net promoter score, customer satisfaction, customer effort score. That really depends on what your purpose is. The second then is free comments, and you're just asking them, hey, why did you give us this rating? And where that helps you is the score tells you basically, is the person happy? Are they neutral? Or are they upset? And then the comments give you context behind that. And you can compare people who give you a high rating, what are they saying? With a low rating, what are they saying? And quickly you can figure out pain points as well as areas of strength. So rating, why'd you give us that rating? Third one is, can we follow up with you? And what I love about that is when you can follow up with a customer, I like to word it to say, if we have additional questions, may we follow up with you? Then if someone's really upset, you could follow up with them, hopefully save the customer, but gain additional insight. Why were you angry? What happened specifically? And if they were really, really happy, maybe you want to follow up with them anyways and say, hey, thanks for your great feedback. We really appreciate it. Let's continue the loyalty. So those would be my suggestions for a survey. Oh, the third one, sorry. So step one, have a purpose. Step two, be really economical with your questions. Target them to your purpose. Step three, take action. If you're not taking any action, don't do a survey. Just stop. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your customer's time. The whole purpose of a survey is to gain insight that can lead you to take action that can somehow improve customer service. So those would be my tips for customer service survey. All right, so got some great questions here, and I want to see if I can come to them. Nate, let's see. Nate's sharing, we're trying to make it our service vision as much about serving each other. So back to, how do we treat employees, which is right on target. We want to be able to make sure that we're treating our employees in a way that's reflective of our culture. So good job, Nate. Peter's asking, okay, how do we deal with customer feedback on the internet, like Google review? I'm glad you brought this up. I think this is a untapped potential, and specifically Google. So I want to talk about overall customer feedback on like Google, Yelp, any kind of online rating, and then I want to talk about Google in particular, why it's so powerful. So with customer feedback, studies have shown that if you are responsive to feedback, then customers will appreciate it. And they've also shown that good online reviews tend to lead to more business. That, I think, makes intuitive sense. People are really worried about negative feedback and negative online reviews. And people have said, sometimes those Yelp reviews are fake. Yes, some of them are, absolutely. But it's typically a small percentage. So how do you handle it? The very first thing you want to do is you want to respond to every single bit of feedback that you get. Anytime you get a review, all of those accounts, or almost every platform that I'm aware of, allows you to respond in public to the review. And keep in mind, you're not just responding to that customer, you're responding to anyone else who might be reading the review. And so let's say someone gives you 2 stars and says, I had a bad experience and they're terrible. If you respond and say, hey, I'm so sorry that happened, let's follow up. Let's see if we can resolve it. We always try to do better. Maybe you can save that customer, maybe not. But keep in mind, the next person who's reading those reviews is also going to see the bad review, and your response is say, hey, they take customer service seriously. Because here's what else the research is telling us is that if your business only has 5-star reviews, customers don't trust it. They want some negative reviews because people generally know that not every customer is going to be happy. So they want to see how you respond. So read and respond to every review. Take them seriously. Don't sweat negative reviews because they'll all happen. If you get a lot of negative reviews, you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Use that insight to fix things. So Peter, to your question about Google, though, here's why Google's so powerful. If you go to Google and search for a business, part of what will determine their rankings is Google reviews. So if you have a lot of reviews, and especially if they're positive, you're improving your search results when people are Googling your type of business. And so being really active on Google and responding to all those reviews, thanking customers for their feedback if it's positive, thanking customers for their feedback if it's negative, but also offering to do something about it, that can help more customers find your business. So I think it's essential. And then keep in mind, all of that feedback is part of reinforcing your service culture, right? We want to keep doing the good things and we want to fix the bad things. So thanks for that question. All right. So Melissa's asking, our customer service department has grown a lot in the past few months. How do we scale? Well, here's the great news. If you have a customer service vision, scaling is a lot easier. And if you don't have a customer service vision, as you grow, your culture is going to be exceptionally hard to maintain. So any growth is going to make culture harder to maintain, but you need that customer service vision. The second part of this, and I really address this in chapter 4 of the book, is the notion of employee engagement. As we grow, we want every employee to understand 3 things about the customer service vision. One is, what is it? 2, what does it mean? So it's great if you can memorize things, but there were some studies that have been done that basically like corporate values are all pretty much the same words. They're not that unique. So it's great if you say, we want to serve our customers with integrity. Integrity happens to be the most popular corporate value word. So great, but yawn. What we need to be able to do is describe in our own words, what does it actually mean here? What's unique about it? And then third question, so what is it? What does it mean? Third question, how do I personally contribute? And that's really where engagement happens. Engagement is, I understand what makes the business successful. I'm committed to being a part of that. And so as we scale, we want to keep making sure that every person that we add to the team is understanding of the answers to those questions. And the other thing I'd point you to is in chapter 5 of the book, we have an alignment assessment. And it looks at aligning all the parts of your organization, from goal setting to hiring to training to empowerment to leadership. Put those things into place, and then as you scale, it becomes a little bit more plug and play. It's not easy, but it's more plug and play. And I'll draw you specifically to chapter 7, which is hiring for culture fit. When I was researching service culture organizations that are really customer obsessed, this was the toughest one, where I was struggling at times to find examples. And the best example I found was from Publix. And if you don't know Publix is a grocery store. The American Customer Satisfaction Index just named them the #1 retailer in the US. And their hiring for culture fit is phenomenal. The thing that they do much different than most other organizations is they have a very specific process for hiring for culture fit, connects to their customer service vision. A lot of people say, I want to hire for culture fit, and what they really do is they just hire people that they like or seem to kind of jive with them. And there's a whole bunch of other problems with doing that. You end up just hiring people that are like you, but not necessarily specific to your culture. So I hope I answered your question, Melissa. From the big picture perspective, it's really having all those processes in place, and then expansion means hiring. And so having a specific process to hire for culture fit. You'll find guidance on that, chapter 7 in the book. And I also wrote a recent blog post about that. So you're very welcome. All right, what other questions do you have about creating or building or sustaining a service culture, or what challenges have you faced as you've tried to implement some of these concepts from the book? And I'm wondering, thank you all again for the tech support. I haven't heard from Estelle, so I don't know if Estelle was able to get reconnected. Let's see if anybody else was having any challenges. Peter, I don't know if you were able to get connected. I hope you were. But again, if you will, use the chat function to share any additional questions that you might have with me. I will share one thing that I've come across talking to a lot of customer service leaders while we're waiting for any more questions, and that is, I think a lot of times we get books like the Service Culture Handbook. Got my copy right here. We like to kind of pick and choose or skim the book, or we read it all at once and say, hey, that was great, and we put it aside, and then we do nothing. And the Service Culture Handbook, I really wrote it to be like a recipe book, if you will. So imagine I want to bake a cake, and I get a recipe for the cake. Now, if I pick and choose some ingredients but not others, like I'm going to use the flour, but eggs, I'm not using eggs. I don't believe in eggs. I don't have time for eggs, but flour's cool. Water, nah, I'm not gonna put a lot of water in it. I'll do half the water because I'm busy. You can't expect to get the cake that you were trying to make. You'll get something, but it probably won't be as good. And I think the same I found with service culture is you really have to follow the recipe and probably follow it step by step to get that same type of service culture that you're trying to emulate. So that's one of the biggest challenges I've found that customer service leaders face is they skip steps, they don't really fully implement them, and they pick and choose. And when they do that, unfortunately, you don't get the results that you're looking for. All right. So Nate asks, what do you do with an agent that just wants to do their job and finds this culture chatter to be meaningless? So I think there's a two-part solution to this one, and a lot of us have found this. Part one is you got to ask yourself, have you defined the behaviors that fit our culture? And what I mean by that is sometimes we get a vibe from an employee, they're just not obsessed with service as we are. That's going to happen. In fact, if they're steady and they do their job and they do it well, I call those employees campers. We need some campers on our team. You know what you're going to get from them. You can count on them. They're fine. So you got to start by defining what those behaviors really are. And if they're emulating the behaviors that you've asked for in your culture, then there really isn't a problem. You have to kind of just get over the issue of my standards are up here for me personally, and this employee is fine here, but guess what? The minimum is here. They're okay. The second part of that, though, is the employee is below the performance and behavioral standards that you're asking for from your culture. And when we get there, then it's like any other performance discussion. In fact, it's even easier, I feel, because it's one thing to talk to an employee about attitude. Hey, you've got a bad attitude. You're not bought into our culture. If you can't describe in specific detail what that means, you'll never get the employee on board. But if you can say, look, this is what we're expecting, and this is what you're giving. Here's a gap, and we need you to bridge that gap. Then it's a performance management discussion like you'd have for any other performance issue. And so the end result of that is they either improve or they move. And I never like to see employees leave an organization, but that happens. And in fact, if we have a strong culture, we have to recognize that a strong culture means not everybody's going to fit. One of my colleagues, Denise Leon, just wrote a fantastic book called Fusion. And Fusion's about creating an authentic brand that mirrors your culture. In other words, taking your culture and using that to build your brand that as a company you're really marketing to your customers. And what she found was that in building this brand, that strong organizations, they have brands and they have cultures that are just not for everyone. For example, Amazon. We think about Amazon, and two things often come to mind. One is Amazon is universally known for their obsession with customer service and their customer obsession. But do your research on what it's like to work at Amazon. A lot of people don't like working there. It's not for everybody. So having a really, really strong culture sometimes means that you're going to come across people who just don't fit. And so, Nate, I appreciate that helps you out. Really, if you can decide these are the behaviors. If someone's kind of right there, they're a camper, we can really use those people. I don't have to worry about them. But if they're below what's acceptable, then a performance management discussion. All right. This is really cool. I think we got time for just a couple more questions here. And I love that we're able to respond to them. And by the way, if you're tuning in and you even have a reaction to some of my advice or some of the questions, even if you want to say, I've got that challenge too, let me know. I really enjoy and appreciate hearing from folks, which is why we're doing this session today. All right, so Andy's asking, we're trying to build a service culture. What if we've already moved forward on some steps in later chapters before we established a clear vision? How do we circle back? Okay, so Andy, honestly, I don't know how you did it. And here's what I mean. All of the steps further along in the book are connected to alignment with the vision. For example, hiring for culture fit. I don't know how to hire for culture fit if I haven't first defined culture. So what I would suggest, and maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but if you've kind of moved forward and said, all right, we need better leadership, we need more empowerment, what really creates service culture is when we take all those pieces that are pointing in different directions and we align them so they're all moving straight forward. And that focal point on the compass is that customer service vision. So I would suggest resetting, running that customer service vision exercise, and then chapter 5, there's an alignment exercise where you can align what you've already done with that vision. Now, you may find that some of the things you're doing are already aligned with the vision. Perfect. You don't have to do that again. But you may also find that now that we have this vision, it's our North Star, we need to do things a little bit differently. So go back to the vision, hit reset, and it's going to give you clarity. Now, here's the cool thing. I worked with a client last year, and they had what they thought was a vision already. And so it was an interesting ask because normally I'm working with clients to create a new vision and help facilitate that process for them. But they had something already, and they said, we want to make sure that this is the right vision. We want to re-clarify it if it is, and if it's not the right vision, what is? So it was a really fun process for me. and for them, I think, was they found that their customer service vision was not authentic. And that's the reason employees did not embrace it. What they did discover, though, was they had a mission statement for this organization. And everybody loved the mission statement. In fact, they came to work every day thinking about the mission statement. That's what mattered. So they said, hey, mission statement, customer service vision. In this case, they're doing the same thing. One and the same. We're going to throw out this old vision that no one cared about, and we're only going to focus on the mission. And I thought that was a really mature move. People were really excited about it. And so sometimes when you do that exercise of clarifying your vision, you find you may have something already. That's perfectly all right. So I hope that helps, Andy. I hope you're able to just hit the reset button and to frame it as a step to clarify what we're all about, and then you can go back and reevaluate the steps you've already taken. I'm just looking back at some of the comments. Yeah, Arthur, absolutely. You make a really good point. If we have people that are not emulating the service culture, we think about those actively disengaged employees who are almost anti-culture, moving them out of the organization is one of the best things that you can do. People who are actively engaged definitely try to recruit other people, and that undermines your culture eventually. So excellent point. All right. Hey, no one ever got upset about finishing early. And if I'm looking at the clock here, we're doing well in terms of time. So we're able to address a lot of your questions, all of the questions that I received. So I want to put some information up here on the screen for how you can get to me. If you want to use my email address, again, a couple offers here. One, just to follow up and ask me a question maybe you didn't want to ask on the webinar, or perhaps if you bought a copy of my book, you want to get it signed. One of the ways that you can do that is just send me your mailing address, and I will send you a signed book plate, essentially a sticker you can stick right inside the book. And then let me switch gears for just a moment and put on my whiteboard here. I want to give you the blog. So I'm going to just put a little recap on my blog tomorrow, which is Thursday. Whoops, my typing is bad. All right. So here's my blog address, and I apologize, I didn't think to put a clickable link, but you just copy it right here, toystersolutions.com/blog, and that's where you can see, you can search for a lot of these tools we talked about today, but you'll also tomorrow get a recap of this webinar today. And another thing I wanted to share with you, speaking of service culture, if you go to my blog right now, I've got a survey that's open. I know some of you have taken it already. It's a response time survey. So part of having a service culture is really connecting with your customers and trying to understand where you're doing well and where you need to improve. And so this is a consumer survey asking how quickly you expect a response to an email that you send to a business. And I've also included a question on how quickly do you expect a business to respond via Twitter, like direct message? How quickly do you expect a business to respond via Facebook Messenger? And so the survey takes less than a minute. And if you go to my blog right now, you can take that survey, and the results will be there in, let's see, the 17th of April. So soon. Okay. So I can put it right. Peter says you can't see the whiteboard. Let me put it right here then. I appreciate your patience. Some of you had some technical challenges here today, and good to know you can't see the whiteboard. So I got to work on that. I'm using a brand new webinar platform. So good for me to know what worked and what didn't. It seems like a lot of you could see the presentation slides and also the video, but some of you could not. So I want to investigate that. And the whiteboard didn't show up when I posted some information. So chat seems to be maybe a better tool. Hopefully you can see the link to my blog right there. And it looks like it is hyperlinked. Perfect. All right. So let's wrap things up. Thank you all so much for being part of the Ask Me Anything webinar today. My contact information is on the screen. Let's keep in touch. If I can be of service to you in any way, I'm happy to do so. And again, thank you all for being part of the webinar. I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. Thank you.